So welcome everybody. Next topic is utilizing the data attribute client-side behavior in Apex. Richard, floor is yours. You're the boss.
Okay, I'm the boss. Wow, that doesn't happen. I should share my screen, shouldn't I?
Yes, share your screen and
I'm going to share my screen. So welcome to this short introduction in using a nice feature in Apex. It is a couple of so a while ago, since I found this trick to actually get a more to be able to interfere with what is happening once the HTML has been rendered by Apex. So I'll introduce that data attribute. I'll introduce jQuery, which is the library I'm using to actually interfere with the HTML in the end. And I'll do a few demos of what you can actually then do. So I'll change page items into real HTML5 page items. I'll do some record sorting. I delete records from a report, and then I have some I'm trying to make some wow effect, what you can do with all this. So you can actually create some nice user experience on the page. So let's get started. This is me. I'm an independent consultant in 2012. I started Smart for Apex in 2010. I started Smart for Solutions in 2017. Been doing Oracle for a couple of years. My main job is still PL SQL. Apart from Apex, Apex is only a thin layer, and it should be as thin as possible. And I have a special interest in UI and UX. So that's one of the reasons I'm doing this presentation. You can find you can find me on Twitter and on Blogspot. And at the end of the presentation, please remind me that you can download the presentation and also the application I'm using in the demos. So it's publicly available. So the problem when we created an Apex page is how we can identify specific elements on the page. So I could do something with IDs, but not everything has an ID. For example, a row in a table doesn't have an ID. I could use classes, but classes, in my opinion, should be used for displaying, for giving it a color, for putting some other CSS onto it. And I could also pinpoint a specific element by doing some DOM traversal. So get me the table row of this element and then walk down to the children to find a table cell that has a specific anchor, which has a specific href. That doesn't do the trick. It gets too complicated too soon. But there is an HTML5 attribute, which is called data global attributes, which can be used to, if you put them on an element, which can be used to specifically identify that specific element and not using ID. For example, we could get to that by saying, well, give me the element that has data attribute 1, 2, 3, 4. Or give me all the elements that have the attribute data attribute. And the nice thing about these data attributes is that you can add them simply by using the custom attribute in your page builder. Yeah. If I log into my my builder, let's go to the presentations workspace, and let's get to that. Get to the correct app. I could add a data attribute, for example, over here. Where is it? Oh, this is a link. Well, on the right-hand side, you can find your attributes. Where did I do this? Appearance, column formatting, highlight words, sorting. Wrong example. Let's run this page and go to the first item, for example, over here. Let's go to that king item. Here you have the page item, and there you will find on the right-hand side the custom attributes. And here you can type anything that you want as long as it's prefixed with data and then a hyphen. Yeah. So there are the custom attributes. Then there is jQuery. Maybe a lot of people already know what it is, but it's kind of call it a query engine for your HTML, for the HTML that was rendered by Apex. And so you can select certain elements on your page and then do something with it. For example, adding CSS with it, or adding functionality on it, click events on it, etc., etc. And it's included in Apex by default, so it's already there. You don't have to do anything to get jQuery into your Apex application. And then, if you know some CSS, then you know that you can select CSS with a period and then the class name to that it has a class, or a hashtag and then the static ID, or you can select with an attribute, or an attribute that has a specific value, or where the attribute contains a certain value, or where it begins with a certain value, etc., etc. Most of the times I will use either the attribute has attribute or the attribute that has a specific value. Those are the most important in this context. Well, let's change a page item to HTML5, to an HTML5 page item. Oracle only supports 5 items: text, email, phone number, and URL, and that's it. And the number item is not really a number item. It only allows you to, well, it's still a text item. But HTML5 offers a lot more. You can have color selectors, dates, months, times, weeks, and well, not all of them are supported by all browsers, but I think by now every modern browser should have had the most important one of them. But I could give a certain page item on a page a certain data attribute, and then turn them around from one type to the other. So I can run a dynamic action on page load that says, well, for all input elements that have the attribute, the data attribute, data HTML5 type, And for each of them, change the type into what is in that data HTML5 type. So in the first one, I select all the, sorry, go back. In the first line, I select all the input elements that have the data attribute data HTML5 type. And for each of them, I change the attribute type of each of them into what is found in the value of data HTML5 type. Huh? Of course, this only works for regular text items. So Apex, in regard of Apex, it's a regular text item. It's not a date, it's not a select list or whatever. It's just a text item. Then we add the data HTML5 type attribute to it and give that the value that I actually wanted to have. Huh? And then for date fields, there is a quirk because it will use the format of the date is specifically for the browser. So YYYYMMDD. Well, we should not forget that. Yeah, but don't make it a date item. It's a text item and it still has the date format. Let's have a look. So if I go to, for example, let me see what I did here. For the salary, if I go to the salary and I go back, let me have a look here. If I go to the data attribute, I see it should be a number and it steps with 25. So I'm going to change this salary item into a data, into an HTML5 type of number. And I give it a step of 25. In this case means when I use the up and down buttons, the value will increase and decrease with the number 25. Yeah? So if I go here, and you already see the small icons on the right, which identifies for me that it's a real HTML5 item. So I can go up and down by 25. Yeah, and I'm actually not allowed to enter any text. I'm trying to put in characters there. Only numbers are allowed. Yeah. Commission should also be a number, of course. Let me narrow this down. There it is. So this should be a range, a minimum of 0, a maximum of 5,000, and it steps with 10. Yeah? But this is the most important one. The HTML5 type will be a range. So if I now go to that commission, I get a range slider. Yeah, and if I go left and right, it goes up and down with the step indicator. Higher date. Higher date is still a normal date attribute. So that's this one, and you see this is the regular Apex date picker. Just to show you the difference with the higher date, which is HTML5, you see a different date picker, which is more in line with how your operating system displays dates. Yeah? And there are more options here. We have a number again. We have a color picker. Yeah. We have a month picker because I only want to pick a month, or a week picker where I need to specify a specific week. Yeah? All those things are not available in Apex and are really easy to implement once you know how to use that data attribute. Yeah? The week picker just says data HTML5 type is week. Yeah? This higher date data HTML5 type is date. Well, you already saw that little bit of JavaScript, and it is in the export of the application that you can download. The only thing I did is adding that 4 lines of JavaScript inside the onload dynamic action. So I have dynamic actions here, over here, set HTML5 type, and it has a little bit of JavaScript. And it's that. So give me all the input elements that have the data HTML5 type attribute, and for each of them, change the type into what you can find in the data attribute value, this data HTML5 type. Let me cancel this because I don't need to change anything. Okay, yeah, you get some nice, come on, you get some nice extra page item types. On Apex World, I published a while ago a plugin that also uses the data attribute. So you install the plugin in your application. You add data row click equals link in this case, because you need to point it to a column. In this case, we're talking about a report. You need to point this out to a column where it can find the link. And in this case, the column name is called link. And you can add some extra attributes. For example, at what event do you want to start? Do you want to have it in a click, in a right click, in a double click? And you can tell it, well, I want it to be a row click, but I don't want this row click to happen on specific columns. For example, if you have a report that also has a delete option in it, then you don't want the default behavior to run when you hit the default, the delete button. So how does it work? It starts by, when the plugin runs, it starts by looking at all the regions that have that data row click attribute. And then within that region, it will look for all the TRs, and it will look inside those TRs where to find the anchor to link to. And then it will put a click event on all the TDs within those TRs, except for the TDs that were excluded. So in fact, it's not a row click, it's a table cell click, but it acts in the same way. So there is a row click on this one. There's a row click on this report. Let's have a look on this page. Let's go back here. This is my report, and I have a data row click equals link. This is an interactive report, and by default, the link of an interactive report is inside the header link. This is by default in an interactive report. Yeah, so my attributes, my link over here, will be rendered in a hidden column that has the link attribute in it. Well, it's not hidden even. So let's have a look at that, what is actually rendered. This I don't need. Here you see that the first TD has the header called link. And within that TD, I will find the actual link that needs to be run. So now I can click here instead of clicking on the icon itself, which in my opinion is much nicer than really having to pinpoint to the link. As you can see, the link still works. Yeah? And for that, I had to add a data attribute to my region in this case. And the rest is still out of the box. What I normally do is putting that on page 0. So I should, is there a question? No. So on page 0, there should be a dynamic action called init row click, and it doesn't do that much. It only does init row click. So it now works on all the pages, on the entire application. As soon as I have a region that has the attribute data row click, then it'll do the functionality that I just showed you. You could also do some record sorting. Yeah, Sortable is a jQuery UI library, which is included within Apex, but not enabled by default. So if I go to, can I go there? Yep, I can. Yep. So there are a number of specific jQuery UI libraries that are included within Apex, but not enabled by default. And within the documentation, it tells you what you should do to include that on a specific page. Sortable is one of them. So let me go to the sortable report. It looks the same. It has a row click on it. This time with a double click. Let me go to page 10. Here is my employees report, and I have a data row click of empno. In this case, my anchor is within the empno column. The empno column has a link which goes to page 31. And next to the data row click, I also give it the data row click event of double click. So I actually need to double click the row to be able to open up the detail. So far, the functionality you also saw in the previous item. Yeah. But I want to sort these. As you can see, I added an extra column called order number, whatever you want to sort on. Where am I? Yeah. So on the page, I need to enter that sortable library. Let's start with that. On the page level, I need to add that sortable link. It's already there. It's within the Apex static files, but I need to address them to be linked into my page. Yeah, and of course, I need to add some JavaScript that actually does something with the with that library. Yeah, on my employees, I have a where did I put that? Yeah, so I added the JavaScript library. Now, in my report, of course, I should have an order by class. Otherwise, the whole sorting stuff is kind of irrelevant. Huh? And as you know, all important regions should have a static ID, so I can pinpoint through the ID, and that is the fastest way. And then in my JavaScript that actually starts working with the sortability, I refer to that static ID to add the sortability on it. Let's have a look. So within my JavaScript, I add the set sortable. So my T-body, oh, first of all, what are we going to sort? We are going to sort records, and records are represented in my table as table rows. So I need to set the sortable on the parent of what I want to sort. In this case, the TR. So this is the first step, has to do with putting a pointer on the page. So the TR is actually a pointer. Otherwise, I get the arrow, but as soon as I get here, it changes into a pointer. That is the first row. And then I need to move over my data attribute from one element to its parent. So as you can see, I'm looking at the anchor that has the data ampno attribute. This time I put the data attribute on the anchor within the report. So we come back to this later. My anchor is over here, and here I'm putting the employee number in the data ampno attribute. And this data attribute will be moved over to the table row. As soon as I run the page, this JavaScript gets kicked off, and it moves all the data attribute from the anchor to the table row. If I do an inspect on the table row, you'll notice that it has the data ampno attribute. Apex doesn't allow me to put the data attribute on the table row. That's why I did this trick. So I put it on the anchor, but within the anchor, it's not there anymore. Yeah? My jQuery, my JavaScript moved it over. It took all the anchors that have a data ampno attribute, and for each of them, took the closest table row, added data ampno, and put the value of this ampno in it, and then removed the data attribute from the anchor. Yeah? So now I have a cursor on my page, and I moved over all the data attributes from the anchor, which is not usable, to the table row, which is usable as a sorting mechanism. And now I can set the actual sorting. So my T-body, which has the table rows in it, make it sortable. This is a helper function to do something with weight. It's not that important, and we could do without, but the actual interesting thing is over here. Yeah? As soon as I stop dragging, I'm taking all the employees from the HTML, or I'm creating an array. Let me explain it completely. I create an array, and I take all the table rows, all the elements that have a data ampno attribute, and I push the value onto the employees array. And then I can use the Apex server process. In this case, it's AJAX sort emp. That process, I'll show you that later. I give it the array. And after everything is done, refresh the report. And if I did a refresh of the report, I need to set sortable again. So the sortable is applied to my table, and this function here only gets executed when I stop dragging. Yeah, so it's a deferred function, so to say. If I open up, I click and I hold it, I can actually start moving it around. And King is now number 20, as you can see on the right. Well, let's give it 150. 140, of course, because that's the last number. Yeah. So it stops dragging, and then it kicks off the AJAX process. And I think in the end, let's go to network. Let's clean this. And if I move this one over, you'll notice I have this is the result of the refresh. This is also a result of a refresh. And this is the result of the actual process. Yeah. Here you see what is actually in the array that I just sent over. Yeah? It does the AJAX sort emp process, and this is the array I'm going to send it over. Let's have a look at that function. It doesn't do that much. AJAX sort emp. I'm getting it in. I'm looping through that FO1 array, and for each element in that array, I do an update. I know it's not the most logical thing to do, and maybe I could do a for all intelligent thing here, but this describes what it needs to be done really easily. Record sorting. So you saw this handoff function, you saw the process to update, and you saw it working in Apex. Kind of easy once you know how to implement that. Now let's delete a record from a report. Here, for example, we want to delete a record from the M table. And we can do that by showing a delete icon. Here you see how that could look. And then, of course, after we click on that icon, we need to initiate a handler. Are you sure you want to delete? We will save the value in a hidden item. Then we execute some PL SQL code. We alert that the record has been deleted, and we refresh the report. Let's have a look at that. Let's close this. Yep. I have 3 examples here of how to implement that delete. Let's edit page 80. Let's go to my report. I have nothing on my report except for that data row click stuff. And here you see an example of the data row click exclude. I don't want the row click to happen on delete row, del row, and what is here, and delete button. In my columns, delete row, del row, and delete button. These are the 3 ways of how you can create that button. Here, the delete row is the first one. Yeah, it just gives me an icon. The del row is the second one. It's a link. And within the link, I create a data delete attribute where I refer to the employee number. So the employee number is taken out of that column. Yeah? I give it a class, etc., etc. These things can be found, if you're not familiar with that, on apex.oracle.com/ut. I use this a lot. And there is an icon builder here, where you can use the icon or the HTML. And if I go for trash, I most of the times use that. I could copy the HTML, add the data attribute, and then I'm off. I could give it a specific color. Where am I? Oh, it doesn't show me that anymore. But I can give it a specific color as well, which can also be found through the rest of the Universal Theme application. Do have a look at this application, it's really nice. So I have 3 buttons now. So now I need to add some JavaScript that actually, or a dynamic action in this case, that actually hits and is kicked off when I click something. So I have a dynamic action, delete row. Once you click on something that has an attribute that is called data delete ID, then you need to start doing this. So I'm using the data delete ID jQuery selector to only have this fired when I click on something that has a data attribute that is called data delete ID. Let's have a look here. Inspect. Within the there it is. Where is it? On the button then. There is data delete ID. And here, data delete ID. So it doesn't really matter where I click. And the last one, inspect. Data delete ID. Yeah. So it doesn't really matter if I'm using whatever function I'm using. There's only different ways of showing that delete button. And then I'm having that step process that I needed to do. Confirm. Are you sure you want to delete? I set the value of a hidden item. The hidden item is P80 delete row, which is a hidden item. And I refer to what I just clicked. I refer to the triggering element, take out the data attribute called delete ID. And put that value into P80 delete row. I execute the delete statement. I alert we deleted it, and I refresh the region. Are you sure? Yes. There must be a, let's take it close. They don't have employees around it. Record is deleted, and it's gone. Yeah, now I need to repopulate the M table again for my next presentation, but that's not a problem. So wrapping everything up, and making some nice UX to it. Let's say we need to send a letter to an employee. And we must be able to choose from predefined alineas, how do you call them, pieces of text. We must be able to change the order in which those alineas appear on the letter. We must be able to change the alinea's text without modifying the original predefined text. But relax, we only need to send one letter per employee. Apex out of the box, interactive grid. Let's see how that looks. So these are the letter texts. Apex out of the box. I have my letter here, which has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 alineas, and I can change that alinea accordingly, and I can change the order by putting a 5 in here and then saving it. Then it will go into a different order. Not really so nice. Let's hack the user interface. Let's hack the user interface. Let's do it in a nice way. This still looks the same. Let's open up the president. Let's make this a little bit smaller. Yeah. Let's start with a new one that doesn't have anything yet. So I want to have this and this alinea. And this one in between those two. And this word is incorrect. What was it? Refresh it. Yeah. And all this is done with using jQuery and saving on the database, etc. But all of this is done using jQuery and data attributes. If I look at this page, yeah, I'm having a header, some header information that is only display. I have the standard text report, which is only the code and the ID, and on the code, I'm using the data attribute of the ID. And here I can start with dragging and dropping them over. And on the right-hand side, which is my letter, I'm doing kind of the same thing. If it allows me to do that. What I do here is I also make all the columns hidden except the last one. And there I'm kind of abundant in my HTML, where I can add the data attribute over here. I can make it a drag handler. I can give it the actual text in it. I can make that editable by adding the content editable is true, etc., etc. So that gives me the opportunity to really play with the user experience, not so much the user interface, because it still looks the same, but you can play with the user experience. And this is a far nicer approach than the interactive report or the interactive grid that you saw earlier. Nicer approach for this example. I'm not saying the interactive grid is bad in any way, but for this example, I think this is a little bit a nicer solution to it. So, are there any questions? Because that kind of rounds up my my talk.
They can ask questions in Q&A.
Okay, do we have Q&A? Okay, but there are no open questions.
Yeah.
Well, then this rounds up the presentation. I am.
We can wait for a few minutes. Yeah, we have more time.
Is deleting rows better using Apex server process, as you don't need temporary item? Yes, you don't need an Apex with Apex server process. You don't need. Yeah, you could do that. Yeah, Why not? Makes your JavaScript a bit more complicated. So I wanted to have an example that only uses dynamic action. Yeah, do you have an example on your website or blog? Yeah, that's what I just promised you in the beginning. You can download this at smartforsolutions.com. What was it? Bitbucket.org. Sorry, Bitbucket. There it is. That is the URL. And then there is a public presentations, and here I will upload the presentation, the PDF, and the application that you can install. I believe we still have a few Smart for Solutions posters available, Matti. Send me an email. Okay, good. Well, then this rounds up the presentation. You know how to reach me. You know how to get to the examples. Have fun using Apex.